We shall next go on to our next speaker, Dr. Suvira Jain, who's a leading cornea and cataract consultant from Mumbai and is attached to Rishabha Eye Hospital and Laser Center. And she has another challenging case, and she's so beautifully depicted it. So let's have her presenting it now.
Thank you.
Can we have your video, Dr. Suvira?
Yeah, it's on now, I think. 1 second. Can you see it? Yeah? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. So before I start the video, I'll just give you a minute of an overview, not even a minute. So this was live surgery in 2019 Bhopal, and I opted to show the surgical technique of a posterior polar cataract. This was a patient who had a very early nuclear sclerosis and what appeared to be like a typical polar cataract. Let's start with the case. So here's the patient with an early nuclear sclerosis and with a classic polar cataract. I did block the patient because I like to do my polar cataracts, any surgery which is unpredictable, under a block. A typical 5 millimeter rhexis was performed and a classic hydrodelineation to create the endonucleus bowl. I use the soft shell technique. For want of time has not been shown here. And the technique that I'm performing to do a nucleus disassembly is the direct chop technique. And as you can see, in a very slow, controlled manner, under low flow settings, with minimum lateral separation, the nucleus is broken down into 4 or 5 fragments, and turn by turn, each fragment is brought to the tip and emulsified. Now, up to the point of the nucleus management, everything seems to be going fine. Now, here's the second last fragment being emulsified. At the end of nuclear emulsification, we do a fluid visco exchange. Then I've done a visco separation of the epinucleus. The epinucleus is also removed with the phaco probe in the epinucleus mode. Once the epinucleus is removed, once more, I perform a visco-fluid exchange.
We can't see the thing.
We can't see it,
Anand?
Sharik, Anand?
We can't see it.
Yeah.
Yes,
I think you can manage now. So this is the cortex being removed. Again, I prefer bimanual irrigation aspiration because almost always you can circumferentially remove the cortex. And everything seems fine here. Intermittently, I keep looking in the area of the posterior capsule to ensure everything is okay. And as you can see, a very stable chamber, a very controlled irrigation aspiration. And suddenly now I notice that there are those vertical, ellipsoid tear in the posterior capsule. So at this point, I perform a visco-fluid exchange. The aim of doing this step here is to prevent any vitreous herniation. And since the tear has not enlarged in any way, I don't see a splaying apart of the tear, I continue under viscoelastic to perform irrigation aspiration. There seemed to be no need to do an anterior vitrectomy, so I proceed with the irrigation aspiration in a very controlled manner, ensuring that no vitreous seems to be herniating at any point. Towards the end of irrigation aspiration, it's just the last bit of the cortex that is remaining. And instead of swapping hands around, again playing around with visco, I remove the cortex and perform a visco-fluid exchange. Now I've got a tear from equator to equator in the posterior capsule, a classic polar tear. And I choose to attempt to put in this EDOF lens in the capsular bag. It is quite a rigid lens, and therefore I thought that I would manage. And with care and caution, under adequate viscoelastic, at this point I used a dispersive to keep the visco behind. And very carefully, I first put the first haptic in, I turn the lens around, and then, as you can see, the second haptic is now hitched and introduced under the capsule and within the capsular bag. See that? It's just brought forward and placed in the capsular bag. Once it's introduced into the capsule bag, it is rotated so that the haptics are at right angles to the tear in the posterior capsule. So we have a stable bag. We have an IOL which was planned for the capsular bag, in the capsular bag, in face of a posterior capsular tear, with no vitreous disturbance and an optimal end result, which was fairly optimal, I would think. Thank you.
Suvira, had it been a case, a wonderful video,
Yeah.
had it been a case, Suvira, where the PC had given away more and you have promised a multifocal IOL to these patients, what could you have done otherwise?
So if I'm planning a posterior polar cataract and patient wants a multifocal IOL, I'm extremely careful in my counseling that they understand, for sure, not even a polar cataract, any patient, that should there be an opening, and in a polar cataract, for sure, I may not be able to put in a multifocal IOL, in which case I would put in a monofocal IOL, which would be like, this was a EDOF lens, which had a constant of 119.2. We had kept aside an Alcon 3-piece IOL, corrected for the A constant, which is 118.5, and left myopic by 0.5 because it would have been in the sulcus. I would have then put in a monofocal lens in the sulcus.
Dr. Ramurthy, I wanted to ask you, what would you have done for a patient had you not been able to put a multifocal IOL in the bag?
We always have a stock of these 3-piece multifocal intraocular lenses available with us. And whenever there is a mishap like this, then we go ahead and place the 3-piece lens in the sulcus and create an optic capture. The
Okay.
kind of lens that, of course, you managed it beautifully, Suvira, and the lens appeared to be reasonably well centered. But this is the kind of lens where that the segment for the near vision seems to be right in the center. And it's a
Yes,
small
sir.
segment. I've not used it much, just used a couple of these. And even a little bit of decentration would lead to the results going away. So I would be, and so you have an end-to-end tear. I'd be a little, I might go ahead and place a diffractive multifocal in these situations in the bag because the diffractive rings are all there. But here it's right in the center. Be a little careful about putting this, though it seemed to end well in your hands.
Yes, I guess it just got lucky. At the end, when I found the first and the third, the Purkinje images 1 and 3, when the eye was coaxial, the lens seemed to be centered. And fortunately for me, it did stay centered even thereafter in the post-operative period.
Dr. Minu, if it had been a toric IOL, what could you have done?
Toric IOLs, even if it is a anterior capsule rupture or it's a posterior capsule rupture, we can't make sure that we can place the haptics in the right orientation. So I would definitely abandon a toric IOL. Maybe if it is a 90-degree opposite to the vertical tear, then sometimes it may hold on. But it can't be sure, and if it rotates, and if you may not be able to aspirate very well from underneath the IOL also, it may very well rotate and you will end up in another. So that I would not definitely do. But in one of this case, I just wanted to mention one point. In between, we saw visco being injected from outside the paracentesis. So because I have also had problems with that, and so I am a little scared about visco being injected from outside the paracentesis, as it can go underneath the DM and you can have a visco underneath the DM. And also, once you see the rent, the next viscoelastic which I put would be viscoat. No financial interest in that, but viscoat, which can stay there for a while we are doing the irrigation aspiration with lower aspiration flow rate.
Dr. Kamal, your thoughts about this situation, and also how would you differ in removing the cortex in these cases when there is a PCR there? Would you like to strip it clock-hour wise, or would you like to get the entire 360-degree except the attached area and then take it out?
Okay, I think the surgery was very well managed. The way I would do is, first of all, I'll go stepwise as the previous speakers. I would go ahead and put a multifocal 3-piece. In case I promised a multifocal, my all endeavor is that a multifocal goes in. So if it's a posterior polar cataract, one thing I probably profess at whenever I talk to people is, God forbid you have a rent. Though I have a technique called the nucleus scoop technique, which I follow, but the rate of rent is minimal, I probably near to zero. You can still tell the patient that you are not put a multifocal lens, you are not putting the lens in the same sitting. It does 3-4 things for me, which I'd just like to share for the beginners. Number one, it takes the pressure off the surgeon. Number two, it lets the patient get used to a 1/60, 2/60 vision for 4, 5, 6 days. You may have to eat your ego for some time. The vitreous is more settled. Probably over week 7 days or 8 days, the anterior and posterior capsules start sticking together. You have a more rigid trampoline effect to support your lens. The vitreous is probably settled by itself. there is no corneal edema, and you're far more relaxed and plan to do whatever secondary lens you want to. So in these situations, I've had 2 patients and I've still put in a multifocal 3-piece lens and they're doing wonderfully. One was a principal of a very, very famous school. One eye, we did get away with a normal surgery. The second eye, she had a PCR. So we went and put a multifocal after 7 to 8 days. Now, answering what Dr. Chitra had asked, I follow a technique I learned with Dr. Harbans of dry visco removal. I just put a little bit of viscoelastic. I may use a 23 gauge vitrectomy cutter with just whack on and a slight amount of fluid running at maybe 40 centimeter of height in the eye. So this fluid is enough to keep a trampoline effect, yet I'm not disturbing the viscoelastic layer I'm given. I go sector by sector, peel it with my 23 gauge cutter just on vacuum. And suppose I see a bigger piece. So rather than pulling the whole piece out from the side port, I get it, free it in the center. I just floor the foot switch, let the cutter eat that cortex. With a slight amount of fluid, I again wait for my anterior chamber to slowly inflate at 30 to 40 centimeter of bottle height. Then I go again and catch the next quadrant. So this is my preferred technique. It does not disturb the vitreous. It does not let the viscoelastic get inside the vitreous. And yet I maintain a very, very low pressure in the eye and I'm able to get away with complete cortical.
Arshul, you have anything to add before we go on to our next case?
No, ma'am, I think we
Yes,
should move on
Partha
to.
wants to say
Yes,
something.
Dr. Harbansdal also wanted to say something.
Yeah, so quick comments, excellent surgery, and let us remember you are doing it in live surgery session. So, so that itself is a definite amount of take on this. So very coolly done. Just 2 things that I would do a little differently. One is I would do dry aspiration to remove the rest of the cortex once we have discovered that there is a PC rupture. So just putting in the viscoelastic and not putting in the irrigation, aspirating it, and once the aspiration is becomes more or less okay, and then refilling with viscoelastic as and when required, but doing dry aspiration. So that was one thing that I would like to do. The other thing which you did excellently is placing the lens in the bag. So here the technique that I usually follow is I land the leading haptic on the iris first, and then place the trailing haptic inside. The trailing haptic, then I maneuver in such a way so that it arm twists and it goes in between that space between the torn posterior capsule and the anterior capsule, rotating it first into the perpendicular direction to the tear. So first putting it in that particular segment where the tear is not there, so that I can just place it in that hammock of the bed between the anterior capsule and the torn posterior capsule. So I would not rotate inside the bag once, because that might disturb the posterior capsule and might make the rent big and the vitreous might come in. So this is just what I would do, but excellently done surgery.
Dr. Harbansh, I would take your question later. I'll go on to the next speaker. We have 15 of them.